Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Jeff Poole.
And I'm Joe Lalo.
And it is just the three of us this week. We're going to be answering some of the questions that got sent in or tweeted in from Twitter, and a couple from the email pile. We're going to be talking about book stuffing that's been in the news lately. What's a marketing waste of time? A little bit about pen names and covers for newsletter magnets. Are they necessary? Before we jump into the questions, guys, do you have any news you'd like to share with our listeners?
As for me, my latest fantasy, I forget the number. I've just got to the point where I don't even know what number it is, 10th, 11th, 12th, somewhere around there. That one just got finished. We sent to the beta readers here shortly. I now have 2 more audiobooks that are waiting for me to go all the way through to listen and make sure everything's all right. And am I far behind? Yes, but I'm getting there. So then I'll be moving on. I was planning on going just to my next murder mystery there, but my wife convinced me that I just finished number 2 of 3 of a trilogy. So maybe I ought to consider, since I kind of maybe put a cliffhanger in number 2, that I should finish number 3 before I get crucified. So I'll be working on the next fantasy after that to finish up the trilogy. And that's about it for me.
As for me, not a whole lot has changed since last time. I decided to set aside. I have been working on a Book of Deacon story, but I've been neglecting my Big Sigma stuff, and I asked on the fan page if anybody wanted me to do sci-fi instead, and that was the plurality. Not everybody said it; it wasn't unanimous, but the largest number of people said they would prefer if I did a sci-fi. So I'm hoping I'm doing what I hope will be a sort of a quick entry in the Big Sigma series. I'm 2 days into it, so who knows. Other than that, I have had 2 children's books, like illustrated picture book type things, in the works for a while. One of the artists has sort of put me on her actual schedule, so there's a possibility that this year that'll be happening, but it's still a long way out. There's no finished illustrations yet, and yeah, that's about it for me, I suppose.
And were you doing something with audiobooks too that do you want to share or hold it back?
I was. There's a bundle that I'm going to be a part of in Story Bundle coming up, and we wanted to try to put some audiobooks in it, but most of my audiobooks are published by Books in Motion, and traditionally published. So you don't really have a lot of options with doing promos on that stuff, but I've been talking to them, and there's a couple of different ways that they have suggested we might be able to do it. So basically, I had a back and forth with Books in Motion, and they were willing to give me the opportunity to sell books. I would be paying the author price for them, and I would be including them in a bundle in that way, so that basically I become a bookstore because I can drop them down to about half price. So it gave me some leeway there. It turns out initially they were a little bit confused. They thought I was going to be buying, like, I said digital editions, and they thought I meant the MP3 discs, which would have been way easy. They just throw them in a box and send them to me. But we worked out, like, there was 2 different methods. We haven't picked which one's actually going to happen. That would involve either them or me fulfilling, and then either them keeping track of sales and paying me the difference in royalty, or me just paying them the price up front and then having the digital copies to sell. But it is an experiment, and I'll tell you if it happens and how it goes down. It's an experiment in finding a way to actually run an audiobook promotion.
All right, very cool that everybody's getting audiobook stuff done. I'm doing a new series, which a month ago I think we had one of these three-way. No 3 ways on here, guys. But we had a Just Us episode, and I mentioned I was doing a book as a side project that was not scheduled and was pushing my other stuff that was scheduled back. I've now decided, as long as I'm doing a book and building this whole new world, I might as well at least do 5 books. I mean, why wouldn't you? You're putting this much effort into it. So it's going to be a high fantasy mystery series. I don't think it's going to sell as well as dragon stuff. And it's, we've talked about before how we don't always make the smartest marketing decisions on here, or business decisions. My Heritage of Power series that did really well with the dragons, I did 5 books in it, and they were still selling one. I was like, should I draw this out and write a few more books in this series? but I had really wrapped things up pretty well at the end of book 5, and so I left it for now. And so this is a whole new world, and I'll be basically starting from scratch with trying to sell it. So, you know, I'm fortunate to have enough to have some readers that will try pretty much anything I write. But like I said, I don't think it really is tropey enough or popular enough to, you know, take off and stick on its own. But I will write at least the first 3 books before publishing them, as I've done before. That's to keep from getting discouraged if I put book 1 out there and it doesn't sell that well.
That'll take you what, 3 weeks?
No, about a month a book. And then I will get back to a series I've been trying to do a new installment in for a while. And speaking of the audiobooks, I'm thinking of doing the production myself on this series instead of I've been handing a lot of things off to a publisher of audiobooks, and this would give me an opportunity to play around with not being exclusive with Audible and maybe putting it in Kobo and some of the stores we've talked about now that are kind of getting into the scene. So if I do that, we'll see. One advantage would be that I could possibly get book 1 out as I have the ebook ready to go, which I don't think I've ever managed to do. I got close with one of my pen name series, and it made a huge difference, as you would expect. When the book is selling well and the audiobook is there for them to buy, you know, there's more chance that people are going to click over and buy it. Maybe even get both if you get the Amazon links in and gives people the deal. And on the flip side, if you wait 12 months to get the first audiobook out and your series has already died off a lot by then, you know, then it's not going to probably sell as many copies. But that's it for my news. Do you guys have anything else you want to mention before we jump into the questions?
Nope, that's about it, except I looked at the list of questions and the list just kept going and going and going. I was like, I think we're going to have enough to cover an hour easily.
Yes, I'm going to try not to talk too much on anyone. Ha, ha, ha. So we don't end up going for 2 hours because I haven't had dinner yet. Oh, my other news is that I'm trying Diet Coke Blood Orange, Zesty Blood Orange. They're not a sponsor of the show, so do not go out and buy their products because I plugged it. I'm undecided yet on how wonderful it is. As I was telling Joe before we started recording, I'm a very infrequent gas station store visitor due to food allergies and stuff. There's almost nothing I can eat in those places. So when I go in, it's like every time I go in, there's some new thing. And I'm like, whoa, Diet Coke has new flavors. So there you go. That's my big news. And on that note, we'll jump into the first question. This is from Benjamin. I'd love to hear your opinions on where the stuffing stuff, see anything from David Gaughran lately, meets back of book sequel previews, mailing list magnet previews, and promises of free short stories in return for mailing list signups. It seems murky to me, and I'm not sure if I should be worried. Let me explain real quick for those who don't know. There's been a big kerfluffle lately. KU, people have been putting entire books in the backs of their novels and hoping that, and sometimes they put their novel at the end, the new one at the end, so people have to read, you know, skip through to the end. And so they're just going to get a ton of page read credits. So there's, I mean, this is nothing new. People like David Gaughran have been pointing this out for years. But now Amazon has gone in and said basically that you can only put in about 10% extra content. So, you know, and to answer Benjamin's questions, they've actually, somewhere in the TOS, I believe, it's been linked a few times on Kboards, that they're okay with you putting in like a preview chapter for the next book, or, you know, your mailing list information, sign up here to become a member of the ARC team or whatever. That's a whole nother question, as ARCs have been... reviews have been getting deleted, but nobody asked about that, so we won't talk about it today. But I know you're not in KU, Jeff, but do you have any thoughts on this is probably why you're happy not to be in KU?
So is the question like, you know, do I do it? Do I put stuff like that in there, or do I feel that, you know, it's not necessary? I mean, what exactly is he asking?
Just if we should be worried because they're cracking down on book stuffing, putting in a whole extra content, if we should be worried if we're just doing an extra preview chapter or little extra bonus at the end.
I would think if you're doing an extra, like a preview chapter, like a little sneak peek, if you will, you shouldn't have any problems with that. But if you're trying to squeeze in a whole nother book in there, or just trying to inflate the number of pages in there, that I would imagine from Amazon's point of view, yeah, they'll probably be cracking down on that. So I would just limit it to, like, you know, like if you've just finished one series and you're jumping into another series, try to put like a little snippet there. Or if you have book one and you got a 3-book trilogy, put like you got the first chapter of book 2 on there just to help get people hooked, sort of thing. So that I think is okay. But that's just my opinion. I don't really have to worry too much about yield, mighty Amazon. So
as far as I can tell, like just my broad understanding of it, if you're not linking directly to the stuff in the back, that's probably very safe, because I mean, at that point you're not doing you prevent the activity that would give you the free page reads, which is just skipping half of the book. And other than that, like if what you're trying to actually sell makes up the majority of your book, you're probably okay. If your book is majorly something that is not mentioned in the description, or is simply mentioned as bonus content in the description, then you probably know that you're not doing something normal at the very least. So I think if you aren't doing something really shady, you know it. And if you are doing something really shady, then you shouldn't be doing that. So that's where I fall on it.
Right. I do think it's probably okay to link, because you got your table of contents, so you're probably going to end up, Vellum or whatever you use is going to automatically link if you have like a bonus short story. And if the short story is new content, that should be fine. You just don't want to put the same short story in every book you have in KU. That's where it gets into the questionable area. And we'll see if Amazon actually succeeds in squashing this. They can say whatever they want, but if they don't enforce it, people are just going to keep doing it. And I have to say, it's a little, what is wrong with people, man? Your book's like 20 in the entire Amazon store is not enough. You got to like add 1,000 pages. At 500,000 this month was just not going to be cool. So I got to make it 700,000 if I can. Don't ruin it for all of us, man. All right, there's my rant, and I'm done with that question. All right, moving on. Roland, what do authors worry about that are really a big waste of time when it comes to sales and marketing? Getting into stores? What else?
To me, that'd be the number one. Is everyone always to think if you're an author, naturally your book has to be found in the bookstore, and bookstores have limited shelf space. They're going to be real selective on what they put there. What else do we want not to be worried about? Wow, I can honestly not think of a single thing except for that. Joe?
I don't think that there's anything that's 100% a waste of time. I think everything that you do could have some impact, but like a few things probably aren't worth the time investment versus return on investment. So I've found that like blogger reviews can be helpful, but I don't know that you should really be jumping through hoops to send your book to a dozen different book review bloggers. Like that's one thing that I don't think marketing wise is going to pay off hugely, unless they're a gigantic book blogger, but I can't bring any to mind at the moment. Also, this is one that's not so much a sales or marketing thing, but a thing that a lot of people get worked up about, and I think it's not that worrisome. Piracy. You're going to get, if you do a search on your book, if your book is in a store, you're probably going to find some site that claims to have your book available like as a torrent, and 99% of those books, like those links, probably aren't even links to your book. It's just garbage that says it's your book. And there are smarter people than I have pointed out that piracy is almost never a lost sale, because the kind of person who pirates a book isn't the kind of person who buys a book. So like certainly you shouldn't be happy that people are pirating your stuff, but I don't think you should worry yourself too much or put too much effort into smacking down every single potential piracy link.
That's a very good point. With those torrents, I did that a while ago just to see if I was on there anywhere. And I found everything on there to the point where I was starting to freak out going, how dare you, greedy, blood-sucking. And then I, out of curiosity, even though I made sure all my antivirus was up to date, all my security was up, and I clicked on one of the links just to see what it would do. Every single one of them wanted me to sign up with a service. And I started realizing, you know what? This is just a scam trying to make you think you've got the book so you can sign up and they can try and sell you something. So just because they say they've got it doesn't mean they've got it.
I will agree that I do not worry about piracy at all. Same thing with writers are often, especially newer writers, worried so much about somebody stealing their ideas. And the ideas are like 1% of it, and 99% is execution of the idea. So I just wouldn't worry about that at all. But that's not marketing stuff. I would say on the marketing side, you mentioned worrying about getting into stores. Yeah, I wouldn't bother with the physical books. There's nothing wrong, like if go down to your local bookstore and see if they'll carry you, especially if you're a local author. But I've only heard from people who have succeeded to like get into the Walmart or the Barnes and Noble and regionally or something, that it ends up being kind of a money loser, or it's just way more effort than you're ever going to make back. Libraries too. We've had people on that have talked about how to get into libraries, and there's nothing wrong, again, with like going to your local library or even asking your readers to request your books be placed into their local libraries, because that's a really relatively small amount of time that you're going to invest in that. But like going to each library in your area, it's probably not going to make you much money. Joe kind of hit on this, but book tours, they were more popular a few years ago. For most people, I've heard that they haven't recouped the money they spent or the time. A lot of those book tours, they want you to like write guest posts or do interviews, and it gets to be kind of time intensive. Spending a lot of time on social media in general, unless you love it and you're just there anyway and you want to make it a big part of your thing. I have a Facebook author page, and I post a couple times a week. I post a few times a day on Twitter, most because I chat with people and I like it. But as far as selling books, I at this point have enough followers that I will, I'll use my affiliate links. And if I tweet something, or especially Facebook author page, I will get sales from that. So it's worth it for me to have one, but I don't spend a whole lot of time. I don't go around commenting on other people's pages hoping they'll come back and visit mine. Last one is kind of blogging. I would say it's for a genre fiction author. There's nothing wrong with posting something that you're going to use twice. Like maybe you put a short story on your blog and later you're going to publish it, or later it's going to be like a newsletter bonus thing. Or, we've had people on that have published their novel on their blog before they published it into the Kindle store or the various stores. So there's nothing wrong with that. But as far as sitting down, unless you're also thinking maybe someday I'll write a nonfiction book on the stuff I'm blogging about, and then you can repurpose it and reuse it. Blog takes a lot of time. So it's probably not going to sell you a lot of books. It could gain you some readers. Most of the authors of fiction that you see out there blogging, they gain other author followers if they're talking about that stuff. And it's fine if you're going to, like I said, if you're going to publish a nonfiction book, then blogging is excellent. But people aren't going to read your article on Kindle Unlimited and then go buy your science fiction space opera story. So those are kind of some of the main things. And I would say too, just be careful of, you don't have to do everything. We have different guests on the show every week, and people are doing different things. Some people are gurus at the advertising. Some people are really great at doing the Facebook joint promotions with other authors. And don't feel you have to do it all. Just kind of pick the things you're drawn to. Like if you're a serious introvert and you don't want to interact with any other authors, then the advertising would be a really good thing for you to learn, like the Amazon ads, how to do them really well, Facebook ads, BookBub, pay-per-click ads. Just kind of pick the things that agree with your personality and that don't sound too onerous to you. If you're not a marketer at heart, I know it can be a little daunting. Do you guys have any more thoughts on that before I move on?
I don't. Nope.
All righty. Do you guys want to get through the list of questions quickly? It's a long list.
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm thrilled to see all the questions there, but I was looking at it going, wow, there's a lot of them building up there.
That's all right. We can do it, guys. All right. Jim asks, I often hear that the first book takes the longest. My first epic fantasy has taken me years. I'm doing revisions now, and I've been working on the book since 2015, making it firmly a lost leader. What did you learn that made you faster?
That's easy. You look at the people who didn't quite like your books, and if like the reviews, whether it's 3-star or below, and they start saying a common element that they didn't like amongst the book, it's time to learn from your mistakes and fix it. But all you really have to do is take your first book, get it into unbiased hands, and listen to their feedback. Don't get all, your skin or get all prickly or anything. They're going to give you hopefully honest feedback to say, hey, this part didn't work for me. this part did, and maybe you ought to consider not doing this or do that. So listen to your feedback, because it'll help.
When it comes to like actually increasing the speed, like my first book took many years to write as well. I don't actually know how many years it took to write, but quite
Please,
a few.
10 here.
Yeah, exactly. So what I learned was, number one, like the most important thing I learned was to write consistently. Like once writing was the thing I was going to do, I made sure that I wrote at least a bit every day, and then I started making goals and kept meeting those goals. But the other thing that really helped me speed up my writing is to have an end in mind, even when I'm not outlining. Like I was a pantser for the first book, so it was open-ended, and that's why it just grew to an absurd length that eventually split into 3 books. So now I know, even when I feel like I don't want to outline this, I'm going to see where the story takes me, I still have an idea in mind of where I want to go. And if I see that this book is getting unwieldy, I can start steering it in that direction. So it puts a limit on the length of the book. And you're talking, I'm the guy who ends up writing books that are twice as long as I intend. Before I did that, the books were literally 3 times as long as I intend. So keep an end in mind.
Yeah, I'm another one who didn't start out as an outliner and eventually adopted it. And it's kept me from having to just cut entire scenes and rewrite endings and things like that. I will say a lot of it is just writing more books and getting better at it. Not everybody that's going to be true for, but I feel like for most people, it becomes a thing you know how to do. It's like, I think I've done my skiing analogy on here before, but if you're a skier and remember the first time you looked at a black diamond run and there's just moguls all over the place. Take you 45 minutes probably to get to the bottom, and you had to get in the trees and try to figure out how to turn and stuff. And then later, at the end of the season, you were doing that same run in 5 minutes. It was just zoom, zoom, zoom. So it's a bit like that for me. The first few books, I gradually got easier and they came out more easily. And like Joe said, doing it every day really helps making that habit. And then you feel like guilty if you don't get at least whatever your daily word goal is, 500 words or 1,000 words down. So that helps instilling a feeling of guilt. Always a good thing. All right. Next question is from Kirsten. She wants to know about the pros and cons of a pen name, especially if you plan to write sci-fi and nonfiction as a psychologist. Do you guys want me to answer the pen name thing, since I think you are both pen nameless at this point?
As far as anybody knows.
I remember you were thinking about it at one point.
I was thinking about it at one point.
All right, if we suddenly see you wearing Armani on the show, no, it went well.
It's a secret, yeah. I guess you'd be better suited than any of us.
All right, well, it kind of sounds like this is definitely a case when it would be worth doing, or at least doing an alteration, initials or something it's similar to your name, so it won't be confusing. But definitely, especially if you're working in the field as a psychologist and want to be taken seriously and you're writing papers and stuff. I have a medical friend that's regretting that she wrote her Fallen Empire story for my Kindle World last year under her regular name, because she's pretty serious in the medical field and was interviewing for jobs and stuff and didn't want her little fun space opera coming up under her name. So definitely a case for writing under a pen name. The pros of it, again, just keeping them separate. You don't want to have weird also bots. You don't want to, especially if you do some romance, you don't want those showing up in your psychology book, also bots. And I would do 2 lists, 2 websites. It can just be a static website that lists your books. It's up to you if you want to try to do social media on 2 different author names. I do not really for my pen name. I have a Facebook author page that I hardly ever post on. So just be aware that it basically is twice as much work. And it's, I don't know how many nonfiction books you're going to write or how serious you are about making money from it. But know that if you want to keep both pen names going, you have to keep publishing under both pen names. So that can be a challenge. As far as that's pretty much the only con with pen names. It's twice as much work essentially. But in your case, like I said, I would probably do it unless your sci-fi is a psychological bent that really ties in with your career and the nonfiction you're going to do. I would probably keep it separate. All right, next question is for Finn, and this one's going to be for Jeff because I don't know anything about this stuff. As self-published authors, should we be moving our websites over to HTTPS? I saw this headline and started getting a bit concerned. Effective July 2018, Google's Chrome browser will mark non-HTTPS sites as not secure. And he has a link to an article, and I'll put it in the show notes there. But what do you guys think? Are you going to change your websites at all?
Nope. I mean, if Google Chrome's making a security recommendation, so be it. That's nice. It's kind of like, if I'm using Firefox, and if Firefox all of a sudden starts telling me, well, as of this date, we're going to do something completely different, and if it starts creating a problem for me, then either I'll figure out how to reduce the problem, or if it won't let me get rid of it, switch to another browser. There's plenty of them that are out there. So. But yeah, I guess it all depends on where you have your website hosted. If you're hosting it yourself, got to make certain that your hoster I know they use all. So I'm not the slightest.
All right. My opinion on this, and I talked to some people. I have two friends who are in the information sector. And they recommended moving to HTTPS for a lot. If you're on like WordPress or really any of the hosted services, in some cases, moving your site over is just you click a button and wait a little while. So if it's that easy, then go ahead. When we talk about marking a website as insecure or not secure, it's probably going to, like, if I use Chrome and I can see right there's a little lock and it says the word secure right next to the address. What you'll probably be seeing is that the little lock will have a line through it and it will say insecure. So, I mean, half of the people using the browser aren't even going to notice that changed. However, there are situations where if you tried to use HTTPS badly and you didn't set it up right, it might make your site literally not load for someone, and it will say this has got a security issue and that whole nonsense. So if you're going to change it correctly and make sure that you do. It's probably not going to ruin your life if you don't, but if it's easy to do, you may as well do it.
Now, do you think if someone is selling books directly from their site that this is more of a concern, that maybe they do want to update that and have it secure?
If you are taking customer information on your site, then you're going to have to worry a lot more about if people trust your site. And if it says insecure, then people are not going to trust your site so much.
Yeah, if you're actually selling and collecting money on your website, I certainly hope that the point of sale system that you use, with the basket and all that jazz, let someone else handle that sort of thing. Like, for instance, PayPal. You can actually go into PayPal and say, I want to sell something, and they handle all the specifics. You can tell them what you want to charge, how much you want to pay for shipping, all that jazz there. They provide the links just to throw a button right on your website. So when you do click on buy my book, PayPal jumps in and says, okay, here's how much it's going to be, and let them deal with it. So that way everything's encrypted, everything's secured, and you don't have to worry about it.
There was a comment that went by in the chat that's worth mentioning. A lot of the search engine optimization stuff is starting to rank HTTPS sites higher than non-HTTPS. So if you're the kind of person who relies upon a lot of traffic being driven to your site, you might see a decrease in traffic just because you'll lose a little bit of ranking for not having updated your security setting.
Sorry about that. I was looking at the chat. I was like, we didn't mention it at the beginning of the episode, but we're trying a live show this week to see if our issues have improved. We didn't want to do it when we had a guest and risk losing the episode again. But thanks for those.
They're really chatting, aren't they? I was like, kind of trying to keep an eye on it. I'll think this go and keep scrolling by. I'm like, wow, I'm trying to follow along here, and I'm trying to pay attention to you guys. And all of a sudden, you guys ask a question. I take my eyes off the chat. 10 questions up is the question I need to follow, but they're doing good. We're glad we're actually have some people watching us.
Yes, we appreciate that you guys came. And moving on to the next question from K. Vale Nagel. He wants to know, or she, I don't remember what your avatar is, Kay. How crucial is a cover for the newsletter reader magnet? Fantasy covers cost a good chunk, and I can't really afford to get another novel quality cover for a freebie, but I worry that I need to. I'm considering combining the first 3 novel covers in a graphic design, stylistically pleasing way, and having it be a 3 short story reader magnet. I'm probably overthinking this. All right. I'll go ahead and answer it first because I think I know what he's talking about. Like if you're using InstaFreebie or doing a group promo or something, and you want people to buy, not buy, but trade email address in order to get your freebie, or just get your freebie, and hopefully that will lead them to buy the book. I do think you're going to need a pretty cool cover if it's kind of a cold call thing where in my case, when I gave away my prequel novella, it was to people who had already read book 1, and so they knew they wanted it. They wanted the story. So I think when I did my Fallen Empire series, it was kind of a recycled cover that I did or something. Later on, I updated it, but I think that's going to be fine. A less higher quality cover for like bonus stuff. I've just done I have a couple short stories that are basically stars on the background with the title that they wouldn't sell a book on Amazon, but they're fine for bonus stuff. You could do like a Photoshop manipulation kind of cover, though, a less expensive thing, maybe a fantasy symbol on the front. I probably wouldn't do a full custom illustration for something like that. But yeah, if it's going to be out there with other stuff and competing with other stuff, and you want people to try you for the first time, you do want to put a good foot forward. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, the person that asked the question is mentioning that they can't really afford to do too much. I mean, yes, a good fantasy cover can cost a whole lot. I would just like to add that believe it or not, there are artists out there that are just getting started that are willing to cut deals to get some exposure out there. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Go to deviantart.com and just put in an ad saying, "Hey, I'm first-time author, or else I need a cover. I'm looking to pay roughly this much," and you will be surprised at how many authors will jump at the chance to try and create you a decent cover there. And there's a lot of them that won't charge that much. So usually they'll give you links to their galleries. You can check their style and see what works well for you and strike up a conversation with them. So I think you'd be surprised.
Yeah, I used to do newsletter perks I would update my newsletter perks pretty frequently, but they were just for people who were already on the newsletter to just sort of entice them to stay and remain active. And for those, I did not do illustrated covers. A few times I have done an illustrated cover for a freebie, but I kept the typography separate, and then I would eventually use that for an actual release later. Not like a main novel release, but like a short story collection. I would end up using the freebie cover for that. But I think what it really comes down to, whether or not you need a good cover for it, is how you are letting people know that it exists. If they're only ever going to see the cover once they already receive it, then it could be super simple. If you're going to use the cover to advertise it, then it should look as good as you can manage. But you could also just we've had people come on the show and talk about how some of the most effective advertising is just a genre-associated image. Just get a clip art of a spaceship, if it's not clip art, but go to Shutterstock or something like that and get an appropriate image, like a pair of goggles for steampunk or something like that, and then some other information. And if you were just to say, "Hey, come here and get my reader magnet," and you do it like an ad like that, then I think you'd probably get away with the same sort of presentation. So you can keep that in mind, I suppose.
Right, and there are also people out there, and they'll often post on Kboards, the Writers Cafe, that will do the pre-made covers, and it might be like $50 for a pretty good-looking, it's stock art based fantasy warrior or something, and they'll change the title to whatever yours is if you buy it, and that may be okay for something like this. I wouldn't worry about it matching the rest of your series. Great if you can get the typography and font stuff to match. But I wouldn't worry about if you did all illustrated, if your reader magnet is a Photoshop manipulation kind of thing. Nobody's going to worry about if they enjoyed the story. They're not going to then not buy the series because the cover art doesn't match. And if anything, they'll go, "Ooh, the illustrated cover art is really cool. I'm definitely going to buy this now."
Just a basic thing, talking about typography matching. This is something that I realized it was super useful for me, and I'm not sure if everybody does. If you have had covers made and they did typography for you, see if you can get permission to use. Well, see if you can get the font. Like sometimes it's one you have to pay for, and if so, pay for it. And sometimes it's a free one. You just need to know the name of it. But having the font available to you gives you the ability to make a cover that looks like it's in your series, but might just be something that you threw together very quickly. So I use that for a lot of my branding.
And a lot of that in that same vein is like if you get somebody that does the cover as well as does the typography to go along with it, see if you can get them to send you, whether or not you use it, or else maybe send us separate images. A lot of times when they create these things, they use something like Photoshop with the different layers. So they might be able to send you like just the typography they use for the book, which you might be able to then turn around, use like it as a logo for your your website, or if you really want to get clever and put it like on a hat or on a t-shirt or something, because it's just something I've personally used there. And it's just now started messing with Photoshop for a while now, and a lot of my past images that I've gotten from the illustrators have been these super long, complex images with the layers, and I've learned that I can separate the layers, and that's one of the things I throw into all the contracts is, I give you permission to show this in your gallery, but this image is mine. I get to do with as I see fit. So I make them all sign that before I get ready to go. So just a quick little blurb, anyways.
All right, good to go. Next question. Holly, any advice for being successful while writing something a bit quirky and not to market would be interesting. Let's cover that before going on to kind of the second thing she brought up. I think we're all kind of in the quirky boat. Like Joe, your Book of Deacon series is pretty on point for high fantasy, I feel. But we've all done stuff that's maybe not quite what's expected, or definitely not written to market, definitely not hitting on all the popular tropes in the genre. Do you guys have any thoughts for marketing that stuff?
Well, I've written a bunch of fantasy now, and it's generally classified epic fantasy. But yeah, I throw a lot of humor in mine. I throw a lot of different. I wish that Amazon would actually come up with a few more subgenres that are in there. But no, that's a hard question to ask or answer. I mean, it's go for it, Joe. Let me think about that.
Okay. Well, first off, if you have an audience already, and this is your first sort of quirky thing, make it clear to them what aspects of the books you've already written are still present in this. Like, if you liked my characters from such and such and so and so, then you'll like this too, because I wrote that too. If you're worried that people aren't going to pick it up based upon its quirky aspects, maybe lean on the parts of it that aren't quirky when you're writing your blurb. Don't hide the quirkiness. It's still a feature, not a bug. But like, when you write your marketing and blurb, talk about how it's a thrilling adventure and has fun characters, and sort of take the stranger parts of the premise and sort of make them further along in your blurb, and sort of try to draw a line between stuff they understand and stuff that you maybe have innovated with. I guess that's the best I can say. I've written a lot of books like this, and I guess the most important thing is to keep your expectations low.
Exactly right. Yeah, I'll go so far as to say as well as if you're used to writing in a certain way and you decide to write a quirky book, then what I've done, like when I released my mystery novels after the fantasy, I actually wrote on there, now this mystery, even though I rate it like movies, even though it's not a solid R, it's not a PG book either. This was more like a PG-13. So just FYI, there's a little more adult content in this thing, and just keep that in mind, because I didn't do that at first. And yeah, I got people saying, "What's with the language?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, this is not Dragon Late to people here. This is, real life sort of thing." So give them a heads up.
All right, and I'm gonna say, like Joe, I've kind of learned that, and it was kind of shocking and sad to me that quirky. Like, I thought that would be a way to set my book apart, and people would know right away if the quirkiness and humor were kind of in the blurb. And you'll see, like, my early First Emperor's Edge book still has a blurb that's a little quirky. But I have found that, yeah, make it sound like kind of, don't be dishonest, but highlight the things that are typical, that you see a lot in your genre that sell. If you got a wizard, highlight that. Assassins, people love assassins. Dragons, we all love dragons. And I've found that I'm a lot more likely to have a book stick and get people besides my core audience reading it if it sounds like, I'm not going to say everything else, but if it sounds like it has a lot of the things in it that people like, and that's what's emphasized, rather than I almost never put my sense of humor or much of it into like a book 1 in a new series. For like a book 8, I don't care. You're gonna, by then if you like it, the quirkiness is there, my humor is there. But I would sort of package it like the stuff you see that's selling in the niche subgenre you want to be in. And the second part of her question or her comment was kind of how to find your readers and keep them rather than targeting more broadly. So like, I guess, let me phrase this as a question. How do you find your readers and keep them rather than just throwing it out there to too wide of an audience and not being found?
How to target those readers and keep them. Usually what I did when I first released, my Bakken Chronicles, the first book there, that's when I created for me, I created the page, I created just any other thing I can actually keep them talking, keep them interacting. And once they realized that I was someone that was approachable, they actually I'll just realize, okay, then this guy, I like this guy, I like his books there, and there comes another book there, I like his style, and I started building up a fan base. And also in my case, I didn't limit the pie to one retailer, and I released wide. So some people like to try to chance to put all their eggs in one basket, but that wasn't me.
Yeah, I guess the way I would, if you're trying to get readers that are going to be loyal, I think building organically is probably a way to sort of cater your audience in that way. Like, if you try to recruit based upon people who enjoyed your first book, you're not going to get nearly as many unless you are very good at marketing your first book. But the ones that you get are ones that like you. If you do cross promotions and stuff, you'll probably get a lot more people, but those people may or may not actually have joined your list because they enjoy your stuff. They might have just joined your list because they enjoyed all of the other stuff that was in the cross promo. So slower build in an organic way is probably a way to get a more dedicated audience. That would be my suggestion.
I'm realizing that I probably shouldn't have broken up her question / comments, because I mean, I think the question is really how to find your readers when you are writing the quirky stuff as opposed to the more mainstream stuff, and how to keep them. And I'm actually going to tell you that it's going to be harder to like find a lot of readers, but the people you find are going to be super loyal. And I've had this experience myself. Like, my writing style does have a lot of quirk, I would say, pee jokes and things that like typical epic fantasy writers might not have in there. Just some kind of random oddness that is part of me. And not everybody, that's not for everybody, but the people that really resonate with that are the same way. I've emailed a lot of folks that and I'm like, yeah, that we have the same sense of humor. Imagine that. They're going to be super loyal fans. They're going to be the kind of people that will maybe follow you into other genres, and try anything you write. So it's actually really a good thing. Whereas when you're just kind of another person writing the same dragon novels that, people are buying all these novels by different authors that just have dragons because they like dragons, maybe you're more interchangeable if, there's not that distinctive quirkiness that is drawing like-minded people to you. So that's a good thing. Once you get readers, I think you're on a good path to, if you want to make a career of it, keep publishing, you're probably going to have a pretty steady fan base that will try your new stuff. As far as how to target and find these people, if you do the Facebook advertising, it's kind of, you can get really specific with the demographics. You can go in and say, I just want to advertise to women that are between 30 and 60 and that like X, Y, and Z. It's kind of hard because quirkiness isn't necessarily a demographic. It's like not something that, oh, they live in this zip code, so probably they're my ideal reader. So I've actually found that if you can do anything where you can give away a lot of copies of a first book, I mean, I think it's actually good to target broad if you can do it affordably. Of course, we all want to get a book ad. That's great. If you can, that's a way. It's going out to all the epic fantasy, all the fantasy readers that they've got on the list. And not everybody's going to like it, but if you get 40,000 downloads, maybe 1,000 of those people do resonate and will become fans. So I have nothing wrong with doing the broad stuff as long as you're not spending a fortune to do it. So I still will hit up the sponsorship sites with my books. What I will not do is do like a pay-per-click kind of thing to get people to download a free book one. It's hard. You're going to spend a lot of money to get this. And especially, as we were saying, it's hard to get that, to know the person is suitably quirky based on the information that Facebook offers you. Because I've certainly found male readers, female readers, all ages will like my books. And the commonality is not where they're from or how old they are or their gender. It's that, like with you, Holly, they share your sense of humor and your sense of quirk, and they enjoy it. So try to find ways you can get your book out to a lot of people, like a free book one, either perma-free or just done as a sale, and trust that some of those people will be your readers. I think that's going to be easier right now than spending a lot to really try to pinpoint them. All right, do you guys have any more thoughts on that?
Not here.
Nope.
All righty, moving right down the list. All right, Dale asks, for each of you, how much do you commit to a particular series before beginning it? In other words, do you plan for so many books in advance, or do you wait and see how the first few do before writing more?
I will tell you, when I released my first book, I pretty much just called it Bakken Chronicles Book 1. I had no idea I was going to make 3 books in that series. I didn't even know I was going to do a second one until I finished it, and it started gaining a little bit of traction. And my wife pretty much said, you really ought to come up with a book 2 and get it released fairly quickly. And nowadays, I'll tell you, when I start a series, I'll give it at least 3 books in. And if by chance, the reception is mediocre after 3 books, like, okay, all right, no problem. Sweep it aside. Let's move on to something else that, either, because I don't know if you're any other authors like me, when I start writing a book, especially with a new one, it's fantastic. It's something new. It's great. And then the mind starts going, ooh, well, you know what else you could do? And I've got little notepads everywhere. I jot down ideas like, okay, I can't wait to finish this, so I get onto that one, sort of thing. So, but yeah, I will typically give it at least 3 books now. I didn't when I started, but I will say I will now. I'll give it 3 books before I say either it's great, keep going, or nope, we're done, move on to something else.
I might be the only one on this podcast right now who has, with the exception of the first book that I released, which was, I got 3 books written before I released the first one, but that's because I just wrote a really long book and split it into 3 parts. I so far have not done the get a whole bunch of books done and basically the correct launch nowadays. I have not done the bank a bunch of books and release them rapidly thing. So for me, continuing a series or not has always been, I'll write a book that has the capacity to be a series and see how it does. So that has resulted in me having 3 series that are active, and I keep writing. And once I've decided it's a series, I will keep writing them until basically one of them doesn't sell a single copy. That's the way I've been handling things.
Will you keep adding new series? So, at one point in time, you could have 6 or 7 series going at the same time.
I mean, if you, depending on how tightly you define it, I might have 5 series right now, but just so happens that 2 of them don't have any sequels yet. So I suspect, let's put it this way, I will continue to write. If one person tells me they want me to write a sequel to a book, I start making notes on the sequel for that book. But as it is right now,
okay, Joe's email is.
As it is right now, I do one at a time. I don't plot out 5 or 3 or even 2 books at a time most of the time.
All right, I'm not as scientific as I could be with this stuff. Some of it is just how excited am I to write a bunch of books with these characters. And I found in the past that if I just do one and see how it does, it's really easy for me to get discouraged if the feedback isn't what I hoped it was, if the sales aren't what I hoped it was. So now I kind of joked at the beginning, I started writing a book, and now I'm writing 5 books. And that's kind of how I'm doing it now. And then if I get to 5 and they're actually selling well, or if I'm just still excited and haven't wrapped up all the plot threads that I want to do yet, then maybe I'll go on to 8. That's about the limit for me. I've done like 8, 10. Usually when I have like 9 or 10, it's because I left the series and wrapped it up at 7 or 8 and then came back and wrote a couple more. So for people that do like 20 books, if they're still selling well and you're still excited about writing it, go for it. But I wouldn't commit to say like, I'm going to do a 10-book series before you've written the first one. It's up to you. Some people do want to do that, but I feel like like Jeff said, if you commit to about 3, that's probably good enough to see if the series has legs, if it has potential. And after 3 books, are you still excited about writing about the characters? Because as we've talked about before, as much as we all want to be like smart, savvy marketing business people, we have our artistic side. And like I said, with my Dragon Heritage of Power series, I wrote 5 books, published them, and they were still selling well. And even now I haven't touched them in like 3 months, and they, of course they've dropped off, but they're still selling reasonably well considering I'm doing absolutely nothing. The smart business person would be like, okay, go do another spin-off from that series or go write 5 more. But you also have to marry that with the artistic side, who, with me, I'm always like Jeff was saying, excited about doing the shiny new idea that I have over here. So, you know, long story short, maybe try 3, see how it goes, and then if you can set your series up in such a way that it can be complete in 3 or make complete in 5, but could potentially go on to 8. I actually did that with my Fallen Empire series. I originally was kind of committing to 5, and then it did well, and so I was like, oh, cool, I can justify writing 8 books in this series. So, you know, be flexible. Don't be too crazy before you've started, even like write the first book before you're thinking, okay, committing to doing at least 5.
I will say that while I haven't done the set series length thing, I always try to end a book such that at least one more book can be written in the series, but at most one more book needs to be written in the series. So at any given time, there's at least one more book, or I could end it with the next book.
You do need to be careful if you're setting up something that's going to have all these story arcs going on and problems that need to be solved. And it's complicated, but we've talked about how this is kind of the stuff that draws readers in. Like they want to know all the answers to the mysteries and questions you've raised in the early books. So it can be a little hard to decide, you know, like, is this going to be 8 books? Do I need to have, or is it going to be 5? So it's a bit of an art to try to have enough storylines going through that people want to keep reading, but not get yourself stuck in a situation where books 1 and 2 didn't sell, and now I've committed to taking 3 or 8 books to do this storyline. All right, next question's from Devin. I think one of you said, pretty sure it was you, Lindsay, that it's best not to name your series after the first book in the series. Can you shed more light on why it's not a good idea? I feel like I'm missing something. And I will answer this because, I don't know, you guys did this too, maybe. But I did it with The Emperor's Edge. I just named that as the series when I came out with book 2. And actually, somebody on Kboards, I want to say it was Robin Sullivan, who we've had on the show with Michael J. Sullivan, made a point of some of the things that traditional publishers do that do not do, that indies do, that kind of marks this as half, you know, self-published amateurs. And that was one of them, was like naming the series after your first book in the series. You never see that with traditional publishing. And it's not like we have to do everything exactly the same as we do, but the more professional you can be, the more your book looks like just another book in the bookstore, the less likely people are going to make a snap judgment about it. So that was the point where I realized, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't do that. But the second thing is just that your series name should apply to the entire series. You know, like in my case, I named my first book The Emperor's Edge, and then it became The Emperor's Edge series. By book 8, it was a republic with a president, and it's still called The Emperor's Edge because there you go. So usually whatever your first book is about is probably not going to be a good name for the entire series as a whole. Have you guys done this same thing? And what do you think?
I personally have not done that, no.
I have done it twice out of 3. The first time,
Neither do you, Joe.
Once again, the Book of Deacon was originally 1 book that I then split up into 3. So I did not anticipate there being a series. I thought, oh, I'll release this one giant book. And then
you said your website. You called your website that too, right? The
yes,
Book of Deacon.
That's right. Because again, I never really expected to be doing this for a living. So a lot of my marketing decisions were based upon this never being a job. And then the second series I had was the Big Sigma series, which had a weird situation where the first book is Bypass Gemini, so it is not the name of the series. But I let it get to like book 3 before I realized this should probably have a series name. So that's why it's not named after the first book, because I came up with it afterward. And then, just when you think I would have learned from my mistake, the next series I had was Free Wrench, with its first entry, Free Wrench. So I didn't learn anything. I didn't make the mistake by mistake once. And I'll just say that the less you have to disambiguate, the better. So if at any point someone's confused as to whether it's a series or a book, then that's one more question that needs to be answered, and you're trying to avoid that sort of thing in marketing.
And to be fair, I never thought of it either until I saw this post on Kboards that was pointing out all the things. Another thing which I was guilty of until very recently is when you do the paperback editions of your books, the chapters always should start on the right-hand page, not like on the back of the left page. That's something you never see in traditional publishing, but a lot of indie authors were just saving paper. So we don't know. We start those chapters wherever. All right, Devin also asks, is it better to launch 2 books in a series on the same day or wait a week/10 days in between publication? I'm going to launch a new series in June, and I'm not sure which is the best approach.
I have never released a book that quick, or 2 books that quickly, so I wouldn't be the one to answer that. I don't know if you two have.
I have not done a rapid release like that, but I would I may have plans for that sort of thing in the future, and if I do, I'm not going to do 2 books on the same day. I will probably do a book and a pre-order on the same day, but I would probably put at least a week in between the 2 books just to give a little bit of time and separation. You're very unlikely to run into people who are going to buy 2 books at the same time, and it takes them some time to read it. So even a day or 2 of separation, I would feel is called for. But again, I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I've done it a few times, and that's pretty much what I do is book 1 on one day and then book 2 about a week later. For the reasons Joe mentioned, they're not going to have read it and be going on to buy the second book right away. Also, if you do them on the 2 day same, I can speak really, it's hard, but I can do it. If you put them on the same day, you're going to fall off the hot new releases 30-day thing at the same time if you were lucky enough to get in there. And so you're kind of shortening your window as to when you want to get that third book out. Also it takes a little while, unless you do a pre-order for like the also bots and the categories and things to populate and for your book to start showing up on other people's pages. So it's just, I would stagger it, and I will do I actually have done the thing where you put book 2 up for pre-order before book 1 exists, just so I can get the link and have it in the back of book 1 when I publish it. So yeah, I'd give it a week. And then at book 3, I usually am a month out, but I would, if you have them already, put it out there a week later, and put the pre-order up for 4 too, when at the same time as you put 3 up, if you want to, if you're selling well, and you want to keep the momentum going. The best time to get a purchase is right after they finish the last book. So. All right. S. Usher asks, do you think email newsletters are hitting their saturation point?
By that meaning that are there too many newsletters out there? I would definitely say that there are, but then again, most people sign up for what they actually want to hear from, and as long as you don't inundate them with all kinds of stuff, they'll say, oh, hey, guess what? I just went out and saw the new Star Wars movie. It was crappy, or this. I use my mailing list whenever I have an actually important announcement to make, new audiobook, new fantasy title, new mystery title, just real pertinent. And I usually now keep them short, so I don't have to make them read a whole long novel length thing in order to figure out what's going on with me. So keep them short and only do them when you have news to impart, and you should be all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us figured out how many newsletters were on when the GDPR thing happened and everybody updated their privacy policy simultaneously. But so I think that newsletters are not going to explode like they once did. So in that way, they're reaching their saturation point. But they've reached their saturation point at a level of very high value. So while perhaps they're not going to grow as quickly and perhaps they're not quite as effective as they once were, they're still super effective and very useful to have. So don't set them aside just because they're not the thing anymore.
If you had asked me this not related to author stuff, but just selling online, I would have said, yeah, they reached their saturation point in like 2003. So email lists have been around for a while. There've been a lot of them for a while. And as authors, every author has one now, as every author should. A lot of people are doing the freebie promotions, group promotions to grow their lists rapidly. So I think that's why. And then they're not, we talked about this just a couple of weeks ago with Damon from BookFunnel. So check out that episode if you haven't yet. I think the consensus we had was that if you are somebody who got the reader because they've read your stuff and they like your stuff, and then they sign up for your list, you're not going to find that they're any less effective than they were 5 years ago. They're still going to buy your new books because they only signed up because they're excited about your books and they want to read what you publish next. If you got readers because of a freebie giveaway and they're not really your fans yet, yeah, you're probably going to find you don't sell a lot of books unless we've had folks talk about this before. You kind of got to cultivate them and maybe give them some more freebies, maybe let them know when you have a sale, turn them into fans before you expect them to buy a book. But I don't think the true fan newsletter is going to go anywhere, where people are signing up because they love your work and they want what's next. All right, John, what kind of content have you seen in author newsletters that was unique / interesting / worth implementing in your own newsletters?
As for me, since I write to 2 different genres, I've come across several that actually just have one newsletter that incorporates them all. So I've been doing it now where it's like, okay, for you fantasy readers out there, I've got a new audiobook out. For you mystery readers, this next book in this series is coming out. So just be able to actually have one news, since I'm lazy, I already admitted that in the chat. Since I did have one newsletter that encompasses everything, that way I don't have to keep targeting everybody with multiple newsletters there. So keep it simplistic.
I've seen some interesting stuff. I see a lot of people who have a non-writing hook that's like sort of part of their author brand, and coincidentally is a thing they're actually very interested in. So you'll see people who are like sharing recipes in their newsletter, or like they have a collection. They're like, when they don't have any interesting news, but they want to keep their newsletter vital and relevant, they'll just mention, they're like, oh, I picked this up for my collection. So just including your actual real life interests into your newsletter might A, start a conversation, which is always useful. B, gives you something new to say even when you don't really have anything new to say, if you're the kind of person who likes to have newsletters at a regular release rate. And C, just sort of lets people know that you're an entire person as opposed to a marketing platform with a name on it.
All right, I've seen lots of different things. I think being personable in your newsletter, if that's you, and telling stories, I've seen people do that. I haven't really adopted it. I will sometimes introduce, a few lines about some non-writing thing that might be relevant, that just kind of share something interesting. But I'm not the person who writes a whole life story in my newsletters. The one thing I did see somebody else doing and I adopted for myself was just they put all of their books that they had published at the ends of the newsletters with links. This is how you buy them. And I don't think I put all of mine in any of them, but I will say, like, here's my entire list of fantasy novels that's on my website. And some of the introductory ones, like I think the sci-fi one does list all of my, it's been a while since I've looked at that first one, but it does list the books and where to buy them. And I found, since I implemented that every time I send out a newsletter, no matter what book it's for, I will get sales on the older books in the other series. So that was definitely worth doing for me.
I can just imagine if you, Lindsay, write a mailing list and then you put a link to every single book of yours at the bottom. The first thing I think of is like, do you ever get like a forward of a forward of a forward of an email message? You have all that stuff at the bottom there. Is like, I can see like, okay, here's this series, this series, this series, this series, this series, this series, and just keep on going down the list. So I think that would be kind of cool.
Well, I want to say the person who was doing that was Bella Forrest, and she's got like 100 books. So, and they were all in there. I think she's somebody that just has the VA send out her newsletters because they were very sparse. And then it was like, here's all the books at the bottom. So there's not really a limit. Got some dog activity going on behind me, so I guess we better move on. All right, Lon asks, do you think that even a trilogy as a starting point for a series launch isn't enough? And I'm going to say that's rapid releasing 3 books, maybe, is what he's talking about, with the plan of doing more. I mean, do you need to rapidly release 5 books? Or what? I know you guys haven't done as much of this, but do you have any thoughts on that?
I was just thinking this goes back to what we were talking about before, where give the series at least 3 books to get it, see if it's got any legs where it can actually pick up on its own. Otherwise, if neither of the 3 are really making too many sales, how much more time do you want to dedicate into a series that just isn't gathering a following? That'd be my question.
I think a trilogy is probably enough. If you really want a rule of thumb, a good rule of thumb might be write as many books as is necessary, that when you release them on your intended release schedule, by the time they're all out, you've got the next one ready. So if it takes you a month to write a book, then write as many books as you can rapid release in a month, and then you have your next book ready after that. But I think a trilogy is fine. 5 is probably safer. Just more is better in general, but I wouldn't freak out if all you have is a trilogy.
I think 3 books is perfectly acceptable. When I did my Heritage of Power series, I did the first 3 kind of back to back, about a week apart. And then it was the following month for the book 4 and the month after that for book 5. And that seemed to work pretty well. Books 1 through 3 were still selling well at that point. And I had, in my case, I wrote the first 3 or 4, at least the first 3. I think I was working on book 4 when my editor was doing the other ones. So I had them banked, basically. If you can write a book a month, great. but you don't have to. And the only reason is that it's just that you want to, at that point, after, the first 3 gets people hooked. After 3 books, they're probably yours if they've stuck with you that long, and they're going to be eager to buy the next one. But don't assume that people won't forget about you, because they can if they're voracious readers. So it's good to get more out while books 1 through 3 are still selling. But I think a trilogy is definitely enough. You don't want to get into the situation where you're taking 2 years to write the 3 or 4 books you want to launch with. A lot of this rapid release stuff is going to be easiest to implement, of course, for those who write pretty quickly. If it's your first series, maybe this might not quite be ready for it unless you just zipping along and can write really quickly, and that's how you are. But I think it's still effective. And part of it too is just it's really cool to make a bunch of money all at once. Whereas if you staggered it, it's not as impressive, and so that there's something to be said for that too. And it can help you make more overall by having them already there. Okay, Stephen asks, are you purchasing your own ISBNs for ebooks? Well, obviously not required for Amazon. It's needed for Overdrive and other platforms. If you get free ISBNs, such as from Smashwords, did it happen that you got 2 ISBNs for the same ebook? Go ahead, guys.
Well, I'll answer the first part of that is I've never purchased an ISBN. I've been given the opportunity to, but I also know that it can get a little bit pricey as you keep on buying these things for all the different books that you have. I just personally let Smashwords assign them, or else Amazon assign them whenever you upload your book to them. So, and I'm not sure what the second part of that question is trying to mean there. Is it 2 ISBNs for the same exact book?
Yeah, and that does happen because you have to have a different ISBN for different editions, or if you have a physical book, an audio book, and an ebook, they're all going to get different ISBNs.
Well, let's just put it this way: if they have done that, I've never noticed it.
Like if you do CreateSpace, they give you a free one, and if you do Smashwords, they give you a different free one. So,
true.
I can say that I have purchased exactly 1 ISBN for an ebook. I purchased one for the Book of Deacon, and I got the free ones for all the rest. And I saw there was no difference between them. So that's not true. I got some junk mail because of purchasing my own, because my address became associated with my ISBN in some database somewhere. Technically, if you get really specific and technical, you need a different ISBN for every version of a book, which means if your book is in Mobi and in EPUB, you need a different ISBN for each of those. Like when you get an ISBN for your ebook, it's for the EPUB. So the other ones don't actually have an ISBN. And for non-ebooks, for paperbacks, then sometimes it has an effect. If you don't buy your own ISBN for a paperback, then if you try to pull the thing where you have it on CreateSpace for regular distribution and expanded distribution on Ingram Spark, you end up having to buy a second ISBN. It doesn't really cause any problems if you do that, but it ends up happening.
Yeah, because I have bought a block of them, and because you need to if you do Ingram Spark, and we've talked about it in the past, that may be helpful if you're hoping to get picked up by more bookstores. I'm going to go on to the second part of this question was that Amazon has suspended lots of accounts recently for fraudulent activity, like they seem to do every year. Were any of you affected by the substantial loss in page reads reported on Kboards and Facebook? And that was probably a month or 2 ago. They did an adjustment, and some people lost a whole bunch of page reads.
I can honestly say I was unaffected.
Me too.
Jeff has no page reads, so they didn't go down at all. Yeah, I checked mine because I had a lot at that time because the Heritage of Power series was still selling quite well. And it didn't look like I took a hit at all, but I heard from other people that some people that are not doing anything weird, that they took a hit just because the theory is that the botters are out there borrowing some legitimate unscanned, not part of their ring kind of books. So you may have been hit just because, and this is probably what happened to Jeff last year, is they were just trying to make their activities look legitimate. So they targeted other books as well. So I didn't get affected this time around, but I heard from other people that did. All right, Joanne, not sure if it was Jeff or Joe who pulled it out of KU, but could we get an update on how it's going? I guess, how's Wide treating you, Jeff?
Quite nicely. Oh, so quite nicely. I have no complaints, no regrets about doing that. I've got a lot of support from the people at Smashwords. Um, I have had a couple of companies just call up right out of the blue that apparently have really old, outdated databases from Amazon, saying, "Oh, we see that you just published this, book there. Let us help you." And it's all I can do not to laugh in their face. I was like, "Okay, not to sound racist, but you've got a real strong accent. Like English is not your first language." But so aside from little scam people trying to call me up and fake me out and doing stuff I don't need, then yeah, it's been great. No complaints. I haven't even thought of once trying to go back and try it again. So it just ain't gonna happen. Not with me.
All right, well, there is your update. Meanwhile, I continue to launch new series into KU. I usually take things out after 6-9 months after things slow down a bit and then put them wide. But that is another podcast. We've talked about that stuff before. Moving on, another Stephen asked, have any of you thought about publishing self-publishing help books like Joanna Penn or Mark Dawson?
Yeah, I was just reading through some of the chat messages here, and there's quite a few of them are saying, have any of you three thought about going collectively together and writing a book about how to market a book there? Or else I saw one comment that, didn't you three say you were going to write a book about what not to do? I'm like, yeah, we probably ought to, but no, I never have.
I did a run of blog posts a while. It was I mean, technically it was for anybody who goes on my blog, but actually it was just me trying to write down my procedure for how I do books. And I'd thought about, once I finished that up, like polishing it a bit and making that just a how-to self-publish the way I self-publish book. But honestly, the method that I use specifically for self-publishing is very backward and silly. So I decided I probably wouldn't sell that book. I might make it available, just wrap it up as an ebook for people who liked the series that was on my blog. But so I briefly thought about it, but I don't know that I really have the authority necessary to sell people on my procedures.
Yeah, Jeff's idea for a title there, all the things we've done that you shouldn't do, might actually be unique out there in the massive pile of those kind of books that are out now. I have not written anything like that. I used to do a lot of blog posts early on about what I was learning and the marketing and stuff that was working early on for me and what wasn't working. But then so many people started doing it that and we started the podcast, so I was less, that became my outlet. And also at the time, I remember thinking, well, I can, if I need to make a living at this, I could always kind of do both, talk about the business side of it or the marketing side, and then also write fiction. But it's gotten to the point where I can make a lot more from publishing a fiction novel than I'm going to from writing a how-to book, because I would, you'd have to do like Chris Fox has done and build up a whole kind of a series platform. And he does a lot of work for authors. He gives away a lot of stuff for free. And same with Joanna Penn. She's got this huge blog and podcast she's been doing for like 10 years. So it's kind of like the pen name question we were asking earlier. Do you want to do twice as much work when, especially in my case, I've proven that I can sell a lot of fiction. So it makes more sense for me to do the thing I really love, and there are a lot of resources out there. So I don't honestly know what I could add that's not already out there. So probably not. I won't say never, but it's not coming soon. Okay, Skygate Tale says, I'm currently writing sci-fi and my chapters are coming out longer than usual at around 4K to 6K each. Longer or shorter chapters, which is better?
I have had chapters that are around 2,500. I've had chapters close to 7 or 8. As long as you're conveying what you want to convey and you don't really, not really adding extra stuff in there just for the heck of it. I mean, it can be, whatever works for you. I mean, everybody's writing style is different.
I literally, as it exists right now on Amazon, the first 3 books of Deacon are not broken up into chapters, and I did very well with them. Since then, I tend to write between 3,000 and 5,000 words for a chapter. I don't think chapter length matters very much. The only time it might matter is when you convert to an audiobook. Usually each chapter becomes its own separate file, so you don't want a chapter to become an audio file that takes longer than the average commute. But that is a pretty deep thought to have when you're trying to plan out your chapters.
I've written an epilogue that I think was 12,000 words. It was a kind of an epilogue for the whole series and had 5 different point of view characters in it. And I think it was like an hour and 45 minutes just for the epilogue on the audio version. For the original question, I would just say, are you doing like thrillers? Should it be really fast paced? And if so, you might want to do more like 2,000 words a chapter. I'm not that person for the most part. Mine tend to be in the 5,000-6,000 range too. The exception is the first of my Rust and Relics books. I was actually trying to make it was a monster story and a thriller, and they are short chapters in that. They tend to be like 2, maybe like the highest was like 3,000 words. So just if you're really trying to write a page turner that's really exciting, short chapters can help convey that. If you're writing more of an epic story, the pacing is more medium paced, I think you're probably fine with those longer chapters. These last few questions are little fun ones. So if you're looking for more marketing gems, you could probably wait till next week. But if you're just curious about stuff, we'll try to wrap this up in the next few minutes here. Ian asks, what's in the bottles behind Jeff? Not at this episode, but in his last office. What's back there? Is it a beer or sauces or potions?
I'm trying to think.
It says on the top of your shelves in your old house.
Oh.
Potions.
Well,
definitely.
those were whiskey bottles. If it was back in my green room, back in Havasu, at the top of the bookcases, those were a bourbon whiskey that had a picture of John Wayne on the front of it. I don't drink. My dad's never going to touch it, but he is a huge John Wayne fan. And once I was walking through the grocery store and I glanced down and I saw this bottle with his face on it, I made the mistake of snapping a picture and sending it to him saying, look what I found. He writes back, buy it. I'm like, crap. So every time I bought him one of these things and he'd turn around and he was like bragging to his friends are like, oh, we want to get one too. So I had the general manager, since this thing was locked up in the front of the grocery store, I had the general manager of Bash's in Havasu thinking I needed to check myself into Alcoholics Anonymous, because every time I walked by, I had to buy 2-3 more of these stupid things. So they were lined up everywhere waiting so I can see my dad so I can give them to him. So that's what those were.
All right. Not potions, disappointingly.
Not potions.
All right. Felicity asks, and we'll try to keep this brief. I would love to hear each of your writing inspiration stories. When did you know that writing was the career for you?
Well, for me is when I've always had random thoughts bounce around in the head, and my wife was the one that encouraged me just to take one of these times and just develop it, try to turn it into a book, see what you think. And when I was going out on a lot of installs for this job I was working at there, I always had free time at the hotel room, never anything on TV. So I'd always just, work a little bit on the book each time. And that's how I started. And everybody that I ever showed the book to, and I know some of the family members are just being polite. Oh yeah, that's good. But, a lot of people I didn't know started going, yeah, I like this. You really ought to, release this thing. So that's when I started.
For me, I realized that writing might be my thing when I got my first piece of fan mail. That was like, I hadn't even had all 3 of the books out, all 3 of the trilogy out yet. And I was like, oh man, there's someone out there who likes my stuff and is looking forward to the next one. I better make sure the next one comes out. So even if I didn't know that's when I was going to become a professional writer, because again, I didn't anticipate becoming a professional writer, that was when I realized that I was definitely going to keep writing, because now there's people out there who want the next thing. I'm beholden to them.
I actually wanted to be a writer when I was a little kid. I was an only child, and we used to go on these long road trips for my swim meets, and I'd read tons and tons of books in the back of the car. This was back before a seatbelt law, so you could actually lay down back there with a blanket and pillows, and I'd get all comfy. And so I wanted to be an author, and then by high school, my parents were kind of like, well, why don't you do something where you can actually make a living? So I kind of drifted more towards computer science stuff, and came back to writing because I always liked it. I was not good at finishing anything. I started tons and tons of stuff. Finally, but in my 20s, I found the SFF online writing workshop. They're still around. I haven't been in there for years, so I don't know what it's like. But and I started, you could post short stories or chapters, and other people were doing the same thing. And I'd see people finishing things and selling them to agents and trade publishers. And so I got really excited, and and because other people were reading my stuff and critiquing it and vice versa, it made me want to finish the stories. And also, you would tend to see some people get deals that you thought, wow, I didn't think that book was very good. So if they could do it, I could do it. And, you know, it was off again, on again, quite a bit. I would say it was when J.A. Conrath posted his big blog post about how he was making like $100,000 a month in 2010. And I stumbled across the site that I said, okay, I'm going to self-publish, because everything I'd read about traditional publishing, I was kind of accepting, oh man, I'm going to have to get an agent. If they sell a book, it's going to take forever. I'm probably not going to be able to make this into a career for 20 years. So I was really excited when self-publishing became a thing, and the Kindle too. So that's when I started thinking, wow, I could do this for a living. All right, Benjamin, last question. What word will each of you now be trademarking? This referring to the attempts to trademark the word cocky, also known on Twitter under the CockyGate hashtag. So if you guys wanted to trademark something from your work, what would it be?
I honestly don't think I have one. I've got a lot of made up words in there, but there's not like a common saying, or like if I had a really good foreign swear word, so to speak, I can see myself doing something like that. But yeah, but I don't actually have something like that in place. So I'd have to say I don't have anything yet.
I joked on Twitter that I was going to look into trademarking the letter E as used in words with meanings. Just surely that's part of my brand. But I also was like, if I'm gonna make the joke, I should talk about I'm gonna trademark the book of in book titles, because nobody does that but me, right?
All right. Yeah, I don't really have anything funny. I have some words I've used that are favorite go-to words. So I don't know if I could use ogling or pea humor, poo humor. You know, that'd probably not be a good thing to trademark. I guess I'd do Dragon Blood, since that's one of probably my biggest series, or including the spinoff at this point. Not that anybody else is going to be dying to use that, but William asks.
Come on, man chess. You got to put that one.
I've never used that in the actual text of a book, I don't think. Oddly. William asks, what's your perfect Sunday?
Oh, perfect Sunday. Authors out there or readers going to cringe, but usually means that my laptop is closed, no writing, and just kicking back and spending some quiet time with my wife.
As for me, my computer is up, but I will usually, like, my perfect Sunday is I get my writing goal before noon, and then I eat an entire bag of chips and watch a movie.
So I've been self-employed since like 2001. So I don't really do traditional holidays and weekends. I just take time off between projects. So I'll say my perfect random day between projects is you know, I go hiking every morning with my dogs, so that's not unusual, but we tend to do the same spots that are close by so I can get it out of the way and get back and get to work. I really enjoy going out and like hitting a new trail, maybe with a friend or my parents or, you know, whoever wants to come along. I'm lucky to meet some people in town that also have Vizslas, and we've been out there with as many as 6 Vizslas on the trail, and that is quite overwhelming to those who run into us. But so my perfect day is just finding like a new trail. And here in Arizona, it's really cool if you can find a place where there's water. And it actually, I just posted on Facebook a picture from this morning. It's actually very lush and green here. If, you know, you're along a waterway, of course. So that, and then maybe in the afternoon, hitting up a winery for some wine tasting on the way back. That would be pretty fun. All right, last question. Thank you guys for listening. Those of you who are still listening. Cookie Brain asks, tell the story of how the 3 of you got together and started the podcast, please. And Jeff, I was telling Joe before the show, I don't actually remember how I picked you out. I know I wanted you to be the tech guy, but do you remember, were we doing something? We were in a box set, maybe?
We were in a box set. Let me think about this. Mark Coker from Smashwords actually asked me, in less than a week's time, could I throw together a box set or something and get it up there? And I think that's when I approached you about it. And you said, Etsy, if I quote, and I quote, as long as I don't have to do any work, we're good. I'm like, okay, that sounds good.
That sounds like me.
But yeah, so we got that together there. Then I think that's when you said to me, like, hey, doing a podcast, what would you say about? I'm like, and you broached the subject. I'm like, why not? Sounds like fun. So here we are, close to 200 episodes later.
Yeah, crazy. And I don't think at the beginning we were like saying we were going to go weekly. That sort of, we were very sporadic the first few months. And Joe I'd known for a long time because we were both kind of doing epic fantasy, and I'd seen the Book of Deacon books always in there. I mean, I hadn't really known you, like talked to you, but I'd been aware of Joe online for a long time. So I thought of him. And very diehard listeners, I don't know if there's anybody out there, but the first 5 or 6 episodes, we had Laura Kerwin on the show too. So I remember going, let's have 2 girls and 2 guys. And I don't even know what she's up to these days. I think she's maybe published a new novel since then, but she bowed out pretty early on. And I was the instigator. And it was because I had started a couple of other podcasts over the years and got into like 7 episodes, which is the death thing in podcasting. If you don't get past 7, you never will. And I just done them by myself, just talking to the computer. And I found that was super hard, and I just couldn't get motivated to do it. So I thought it might be easier if there were some other people involved. And I guess it worked, because here we are 3, 4 years. I don't know how long it's been.
Neither do I. I know we're in like the 180s now for the episodes, I think.
We started in 2014.
Damn.
Yep, this is episode 184 today. All right. I guess, Joe, did you want to say anything about, did you have any second thoughts, or was it an instant decision? Yes.
Yeah, the first time he's like, damn, what the hell did I get myself into?
I remember, like, you had actually interviewed me. You were a guest host on the Self-Publishing Roundtable, I think, and you had interviewed me. I was always excited about the concept of being on podcasts. And then when you like approached me and you were like, hey, I'm thinking of doing my own podcast, and I became a guest host, you'd actually made that decision before you interviewed me on the Self-Publishing Roundtable. And I remember being concerned that that was going to be your podcast and that I was no longer going to be in the picture. So I was excited at having a weekly thing to give my week, structure and to get me out there. So no regrets. I'm glad that it's still happening, and I hope it continues to happen for a long time.
All right, there you go, Cookie Brain. Everything you ever wondered to know about us.
Love the name, by the way.
That's what you get on Twitter. I'm Goblin Writer, You get professional names. All right, but I think that is finally reached the end of our questions. Thank you, everybody, for submitting them and for listening and for popping by for our live episode. I'm not sure. I think we may have a guest for next week, so we probably won't stick with the live thing just because it's a little flaky, and we don't want to lose a whole hour of somebody's time and have to ask them to do it again. But if we do more of just us, our time, I get less upset about wasting my own time than about wasting someone else's time. So we'll maybe do it again. But thank you, everyone. This was episode 184. Do you guys have anything you want to plug before we go?
Nothing plugged at the beginning of it.
Yeah, I covered mine all at the top.
All right, we're all plugged up here, so thanks for listening.
Nice.
Oh, and just so you know, the Diet Coke with zesty blood orange was okay. It's less orangey than I thought it would be, so I guess I was expecting a little bit more, but not bad.
Translation,
Drinkable.
if you're looking for the nice orange flavor, look elsewhere.
I used to like the Diet Coke with lime a lot. I don't know if that's still out there.
I miss the Diet Coke with lime. I actually like the Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi with lemon. Pepsi had some lemon one in there. That was good too, but nope, it's gone.
My sponsorship is with Foodtown brand seltzer.
There you go. Is there any good flavor in there?
No, it's unflavored. It
Okay.
tastes like carbonation.
Oh, well, that's good. Okay, thanks for listening, everyone. The one person still listening, we appreciate it. Have a great week.
All right,
Bye-bye.
take it easy.
So long, everybody.